Good morning, good afternoon, I guess. Robertson Wesley. Hello, my name is Shiloh. My pronouns are he and him, and I'm the Affirming Ministries coordinator here at Robertson Wesley. Welcome to my weekly live stream called Affirming Reflections. Today we're going to be talking about mental health. I feel like today's a really good day to talk about it just because we've been almost 9 months into this pandemic, and I'm sure many of you are feeling the heaviness of mental health and mental illness, as many of you may already experienced it beforehand or are experiencing it now. So today we're just going to talk a little bit about what is mental health, what are the most common mental health issues within the queer community, why that is, and what are some of the statistics about it. So just a sense of warning for some people, we are going to be talking about mental health. So we will be talking about topics such as depression, self-harm, suicide, suicidal thoughts. So if that's something that you are not able to listen to or don't want to partake in, please don't watch the rest of this live stream. If it's something you are interested in, please join us and share some of your story as well in the comments or ask any questions. I will be posting some links to some helplines as well throughout the live stream, just in case if some of you may need to reach out if you do. So please join me in the live stream today. So what is mental health? Mental health is defined as the state of psychological well-being. This involves how we think, how we feel, and how we act as we cope with life around us. Mental health can be an ignored part of our health, our being healthy. It's often the one thing that we don't think about when we think about being healthy. We often think about working hard or working out or sleeping well or eating well, but we never really talk about the mental aspects of health. It drives our day-to-day life. Mental health is pretty much impacts everything that we do. If we have a bad mental health day, it can impact a lot, such as, making it harder to get things done. It can be as simple as not being able to run an errand or cleaning up the house. But it can also be really impactful, such as missing work, not being that connected with relationships, avoiding life responsibilities. So there's many ways that it can impact people, and everyone's different, and every mental health is different as well. I do want to say that the LGBTQ community, which is the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, and questioning community, often face these challenges just like everyone else. Everyone is subjected to mental health, but those in the queer community often experience more hurdles for caring for their mental health, and oftentimes have more instances of having mental illness as well. Some of you may have known from the beginning of the pandemic, I talked a little bit through an article about the postponing of transgender confirmation surgeries at the beginning of the pandemic, and I mentioned in the journal about my own personal story with mental health, and how for me waiting 4 years for surgery and having a lot of mix-ups within that really drove me over the edge, and I was very depressed, very suicidal, and I've experienced self-harm and alcohol and drug abuse throughout my life because of the bullying and stigma and trauma, I guess, that I experienced as a youth. I'm still, coping with my own depression and anxiety from my past, and that's something that's going to be with me for the rest of my life. And so I really wanted to talk about this and not have it be, stigma or anything like that, and I really want people to be able to be open about their mental health. And so yeah, if you do want to share a little bit of your story in the comments, I would love to hear it. So what are the most common LGBTQ mental health issues? So the first one many of you are probably familiar with would be depression. So what is depression exactly? Depression is the feelings of sadness, loss, guilt, or anger that interfere with everyday life for long periods of time. So some of the symptoms of depression include feeling agitated, restless, irritable. It can change your appetite, it can change your concentration, sometimes sleep or your energy levels. You can have feelings of hopelessness, worthlessness, guilty, or self-hating. You also have loss of interest or pleasures in doing things you once enjoyed. And you often sometimes think about death or suicide as a result. Another common mental health issue within the queer community is anxiety. This is one that I'm starting to deal with personally for myself. Um, and this is where anxiety is the constant worrying that interferes with everyday life. So some of the symptoms of anxiety include feeling restless or edgy, tiring easily, having trouble concentrating, or feeling as if your mind is going blank, sometimes feeling irritable, having tense or tight muscles, and having trouble sleeping. Another common mental health issue within the queer community is post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD. This is often most common with war veterans or folks in the military, or those who experienced traumatic situations or scenarios. And so for the queer community, this is often part of our identity as well, and it occurs when experiencing a traumatic event involving threat or injury of death. And this happens, the symptoms of this happening is reliving the traumatic events through flashbacks, upsetting memories or nightmares that may come about. You may feel detached or numb from feeling, lack of interest in normal activities, difficulty concentrating, being startled easily is another one, and then feeling more aware, irritable, or angry. As you can see, some of these last three, depression, anxiety, and post PTSD, all have um, very similar symptoms of being, irritable, lack of energy, lack of interests, and so sometimes they're kind of hard to distinguish, and most of the times they come together. Another one is substance abuse. So here, substance abuse refers to the unhealthy use of legal, illegal, or I guess, prescription drugs. The symptoms of substance abuse include things such as using one or more substances on a daily basis, increasing the use of substances to feel the same high, planning activities involving involving substance use in advance, so planning to go to a party or planning to go to a certain space in order to use, lying or avoiding friends and family in order to use more substances, major changes in moods or behaviors, or frequent hangovers or blackouts is another symptoms. And welcome Melissa and welcome Pam to this live stream. Another one is suicidal thoughts and suicide. So again, censor warning, we're going to be talking about this, and so this is something that is triggering for you. Please tune out, and then join us back again if you'd like. Depression, anxiety, post-traumatic disorder, and substance abuse can all contribute to the increased risk of suicide. So symptoms of suicidal thoughts include talking about suicide, obtaining means to take one's life, so stockpiling pills, maybe going to buy a gun, things like that. Withdrawing from social contact, major mood swings, feeling trapped or hopeless, a huge change in normal routine, sometimes doing risky or self-destructive behaviors or activities, such as reckless driving, things like that. Giving away some of their belongings to people, or saying goodbye as if you won't see them again. So these are some signs and symptoms of suicidal thoughts or tendencies. Folks, if you have any friends or family members that you're starting to see themselves in some of these symptoms, don't hesitate to reach out and ask them if they're doing okay and aiding in them. At the end of this live stream, we'll talk about some of the ways in which we can help. So with this, I'm actually going to post in the comments some of the mental health links here. So take a look at those. It could definitely help. There's one for Alberta only, one for Canada, and one for the United States as well. So please share those with folks if they need them. Last but not least, for the most common mental health issues, this one's a little bit different. This one is specifically LGBTQ focused. So this one's called gender dysphoria. Many of you have heard me talk about gender dysphoria many times. This is a deep and abiding discomfort over the incongruence between one's biological sex and one's psychological and emotional experience of gender. So not all transgender people experience gender dysphoria, but many adopt the same level of gender expression to ease the incongruence that they may feel. So some of these things might be dressing as a different gender, as far as hormone treatments, and or even as far as gender reassignment surgery. Or gender confirmation surgery, I should say, is the new correct term. So folks who have gender dysphoria, it is considered still a mental health issue. It is still in the DSM-5. And some of the symptoms of gender dysphoria are things saying, it says in the DSM-5 that you're certain that your gender conflicts with your biological sex. It often talks about how you are comfortable in the gender role outside of your sex assigned at birth. You often have a strong desire to hide or get rid of physical signs of your biological sex, so this could be things like breasts or facial hair. And in my last Trans 101 live stream, we talked about, binders, laser surgery, gaffs, so a bunch of different tools that trans people use to hide some of that physicalities in order to look like or present themselves as a different gender. There's often the strong dislike of genitals in your biological sex. I don't know if I told the story before, but I'm going to tell it now, so I'm sorry if I repeat myself. But gender dysphoria is such a strong experience to the point where exactly this, the strong dislike of genitals. There was a story of a young trans woman girl, she was I think 6 at the time. Her twin brother came into the bathroom and saw her trying to cut her own penis off at the age of 6. So that's how intense gender dysphoria can get. It can be as little as just not liking your voice or binding, but it can be as severe as mutilating one's own body to the point of severe injury or death. There's also feelings of loneliness or isolation that comes with gender dysphoria, and so a lot of the times to relieve it, there are no pills or therapy that can really help. There is gender therapy, but most of the time it's just to help them through the transition and having their body match their internal gender, and that's usually the number one way of relieving this sort of dysphoria. So to sum up, mental health in the LGBTQ community is often intersectional. So having multiple identities contributes to one mental health. So if someone is transgender and gay, that may have more impact on their mental health than if someone was straight and trans, or just gay and not trans. So there's different intersections there. But there's also other intersecting identities that may contribute to mental health, such as race, ethnicity, class, wealth, gender. So there's many different identities that contribute to it. So there's not one overarching theme of mental health within the queer community. It's very dependent on the identities that people hold, the place that they're living in the world, and kind of the resources they have available to them. So some of you may be asking, why or how does this affect the LGBT community? Everyone in the world experiences depression, suicide, anxiety, all of these things. I guess maybe not gender dysphoria, but all of the other ones are universal. Anyone can experience those. So the reason why I'm bringing these up is because there's a huge incongruence with the amount of mental health issues within the queer community and then within the straight cis community. So LGBT adults, so lesbian, gay, and bisexual adults, are twice as likely to experience mental health conditions than their heterosexual adults. If we talk about transgender individuals, they are nearly 4 times more likely than cisgender people to experience mental health conditions. In a recent study, it says that 61% of LGBTQ people have depression, 45% have PTSD, and 36% have an anxiety disorder. In a 2015 survey in the USA, I'll actually post the link to this survey. It's a really good one, and it's probably the most recent as well. It states that 40% of transgender individuals have attempted suicide in their lifetime. And I know that number might not sound a lot, but this is nearly 9 times the overall rate in the United States. So if we take every other person and we look at the highest level of suicide attempts, transgender people times it by 9, and that's how how often they are to think about or attempt. In another Canadian survey, it says that 77% have considered the thoughts of suicide, and only 43% has said that they have at least made one attempt. We even see that the LGB, so just the sexual identities, have 2 to 6 times a higher lifetime risk of suicide or depression than the general population. Even here we see in a Rainbow Health survey that 10% of LGBTQ people postponed their health care or didn't get any of it due to disrespect or discrimination from healthcare providers. And this is in a US transgender survey as well, stated that that number increased to 23% for trans folks who did not see a doctor due to fear of mistreatment. Lastly, we have an example of the effects of rejection from family. LGBT identity youth who come from a rejecting family, they are 8 times more likely to attempt suicide than their LGBTQ peers who reported to have no or low levels of family rejection. So even within the queer community, we already see a huge difference between those who have a support system within family and those who don't. So already those with a supportive family have high risks of suicide and depression, and then those without that support even skyrocket more. So these are the reasons why I want to talk about mental health today, is that yes, mental health affects everyone, but within the LGBTQ community, we see that those proportions are at staggering levels. So many of you are probably considering, well, why? Why is this the case? Why are those numbers so much higher for LGBTQ people and not for straight people? So these are some of the examples. There are no one answer to answer that question. There's just a lot of different factors that play a role into this, and so what I'm going to do right now is kind of share some of the factors that could be and are contributing to these higher risk individuals. So here we have in mental health conditions, there's increased risk for them because in the LGBTQ community, we often experience discrimination, marginalization, homophobia, biphobia, and or transphobia, which is something that is inherent to having an LGBTQ identity, whereas if you're straight or cisgender, oftentimes you don't experience those attributes. Even within the LGBTQ identified community, we experience different increased vulnerability to mental health issues because of bullying, stigma, violence, sometimes hetero and cisgenderism or sexism. We even see potentially like a loss of support and rejection from family and friends, and so these all contribute to why mental health is at higher rates. We even have that, the queer community, we experience having negative feelings about ourselves because of, our sexual orientation or our gender identity. Oftentimes in society, we see that, being gay, being trans is wrong. We see it in the news all the time. We see, with Trump and with, conservative folks in policies. We even saw a few years ago with the bathroom bills. So our identity is often a political stance, and so because of that, we often feel very isolated or lonely, and we may need to feel like we need to hide our sexual orientation or gender identity. And so this hiding makes us have internalized homophobia and internalized transphobia, which then results into us, having self-loathing, self-hate, and then that mental illness kind of just starts to spiral in itself. We often see here that the LGBTQ community faces many forms of discrimination, such as labeling or stereotyping. We may have a denial of opportunities or denial of access. We'll more often to experience verbal, mental, and physical abuse as well. And unfortunately, the LGBTQ community is one of the most targeted communities by perpetrators of hate crimes within the country as well. It is also estimated that LGBTQ youth and young adults have 120% higher risk of experiencing homelessness. So this is why during our Pride month and our Pride video, we were asking folks to donate to the Chew project, which is an Edmonton-based project that helps LGBTQ youth and young adults who are experiencing homelessness, in order to have a safe place to go, get supports, get food, a place to stay, get warm. So those places and those organizations are really important in trying to combat, unfortunately, this high of a number of homeless youth. And unfortunately, more than 50% of those who are homeless youth and are LGBTQ, more than 50% of them do come from Christian households. Which makes it even more important for us as Robertson Wesley's community to be supportive and be helpful and to bring the education to those families so that in future generations that this number does decrease. We often see that even within the homeless community that we have Black and people of color LGBTQ youth who are more likely to be homeless and have unstable housing than their white peers. We often see, too, that sexual orientation and gender identity within mental health care often is not the best either. Most times, if LGBTQ community is involved in mental health care, which is very rare, and if we are, they often kind of put us all together, which can be helpful, but each sub-community within the queer community has its unique challenges. So being, someone who is a cisgender straight or cisgender gay woman has a very different experience than someone who might be a transgender gay man. So even though they're both part of the queer community, their experiences are completely not the same. And so having more sub-community help in mental health, I think, will be very, very helpful in the long run so that we all have our own spaces. I guess to end off the rest of our live stream today, and if anyone has anything else they'd like to share in the comments about their own experience with mental health, I want to say that this is a safe space, even though it's online, so obviously that's up to you of what you'd like to share. And if you'd like to talk to me one-on-one or in more private, please don't hesitate to reach out. But how can we help? So we see that the LGBTQ community has a higher risk in mental health for many, many reasons, as we just saw. So what are ways that we can help support the queer community and maybe change the way that these factors are impacting the queer community? So some of the things I came up with, feel free to throw in some of your ideas as well in the comments. I'd love to hear them. But again, like with the factors that make mental health an issue in the queer community, same with how to help. There is no one answer. It depends on the person, depends on the people, depends on the location, what supports are available, and the energy that you and the others have. So here we have, giving support in the way that you would with anyone else. Just because someone might be LGBTQ doesn't mean that they don't need almost similar human supports as everyone else does. Another good way is just active listening. It's usually a good way to start, asking them how you can help. Oftentimes, we are the experts of our own bodies, and so if you ask them what are ways that I can help, oftentimes they can give you an answer. And even if they don't, that active listening is a really good tool. We can also share that it's important to show respect and acceptance through our own words and actions. And so, being respectful to the person's, own language about their own identity, their own language about their partners, their own experiences, asking open-ended questions. These are all ways that you can create that respectful connection and respectful relationship with that person. Furthermore, in order to be a good ally, educate yourself on LGBTQ topics. So, such as right now, if you're watching this, you're doing a great job at educating yourself on, the LGBTQ mental health topics. Having this education stops the stigma. It stops this alienation, this isolation, and this fear of queer people. So the more that we educate others, the more normal we seem, and less scary. And so the more we integrate with society, the more that we're allowed to talk about things openly and have more people understand where we're coming from, the easier it will be for us to get the supports that we need. Another thing is advocating for better access and quality care for LGBTQ people. And with this, I can also talk about, trying to be supportive and inclusive in your own workplaces, in your neighborhoods, your clubs, or your own organizations in our communities. You can even do things such as supporting candidates who will prioritize legislation that supports LGBTQ people, and advocate for laws that ban on discrimination. So these are some of the ways in which that we can advocate for better access and better care for people, as well as better communities that support rather than have discrimination and hatred within them. I guess the one thing that is also important for us as Robertson Wesley, we can talk about how we can be advocates in our own religious and spiritual communities, not only here at Robertson Wesley, but wider within the United Church, and even wider as Western Christians. We can definitely advocate as ourselves and show that, you know, acceptance, love, and support for queer people is in the roots of Christianity, in the roots of what Jesus was teaching us. And so that is another great way at supporting us and supporting the community. And lastly, one thing that is a really great ally, or a great thing to do as an ally, is to speak out against discrimination. So things like certain language that is used, or even jokes that sometimes may be said at the expense of LGBTQ people, often putting your foot down against those, stopping them, and then educating those who say those things as to why that's inappropriate and why that does not is not funny and needs to change. Because language, again, I've talked about language a lot, and how the meaning of language is really impactful. And so once we start changing that, changing the jokes and making it not okay to discriminate and be hateful towards the queer community, the easier it is for us to gain supports and be able to live happy and normal lives as everyone else has the option to. So yeah, so that's all I have about mental health today. Again, please take a look at these links down below. Please share them. The Alberta 211 links with the helplines, Canada's mental health Get Help website, as well as the mental health government site for the US. There's many different organizations across Canada, even within Edmonton and Alberta, that help with LGBTQ folks. There's a lot more therapists and psychologists now who are specializing in LGBTQ topics and help. So if you are struggling right now and if you are needing someone to talk to, please reach out, please find supports. They're all around us. If you can't find them, please reach out to myself or anyone who can then support you in getting that help. And not being afraid to tell someone. You know, stigma is very big and very real, and it's hard to talk about these kind of things within our friend groups, within our community groups, even within our church congregations. But mental health is very, very important, especially now as we're, you know, entering into the holidays, where, you know, lockdown is happening, where we're not allowed to see family and friends. We're very isolated. The days are shorter. It's nighttime almost all the time, it feels like. And we're going into the blue Christmas, which is happening. And just, you know, with seasonal depression, lack of light, lack of sunlight. There's a lot of different factors that are going to affect mental health in the next few weeks to come. And so having this knowledge of what is, you know, mental health, depression, anxiety, suicidal thoughts can help you and maybe help some of your friends who might need some support and needs in the next few weeks to come. So keep an eye out on that. Stay in touch with your friends, and don't be afraid to reach out when needed. So thank you so much for tuning in. If you are free this Thursday at 11 a.m., I have my Affirming coffee hour, where it's just an hour long. Feel free to drop in at any time or leave at any time. It's a safe place for folks to kind of join, chat, ask questions, hang out, and just be with a bunch of people that just love to chat and hang out. And if you aren't available, then join me again next Monday at noon for the next Affirming Reflections. And if you have any other questions or thoughts in the next few days or weeks, please don't hesitate to reach out either through Facebook Messenger, email, or give me a call. I'm always here to help as much as I can. So have a good rest of your week, everyone, and we'll see you Thursday. And if not, we'll see you next Monday. Take care. Bye-bye.